That's what was happening, so he knew to keep the youngest inside.
You can hear this. You are not alone. This is the resistance.
What's up, everyone? This is the Tin Man with the Worldwide Resistance Network, live here in Winchester, Tennessee at the No Kings protest. We're pretty much, for those of you tuning in who may not be familiar with the Worldwide Resistance Network, TWWRN, we are independent media. We do not ascribe to left or right political ideologies. We pretty much just call balls and strikes, call it as it is, report things independently without any political bias. Joining me currently is my good buddy from the Canadian provinces, my buddy Connor, who is going to be giving us an outsider's perspective. Now, Connor, while I'm going ahead and getting everything flipped around here, why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of context on what somebody from the outside, as a neighbor to the United States, what would the rest of the world be viewing? How would the rest of the world view what's going on here in the United States? And how would the rest of the world feel regarding the division and discourse?
That's a very, very sharp question. It's deserving of actually having my glasses off and a serious response. So, being that my nation where I live is extremely similar to Mexico in the context only that we just live on the other side of you guys, right? Like, we got the Americans, and up north we got the Canadians, and down south we've got the Spanish, Mexican people. All right. So now, what I'm observing from my country into yours is how your country is acting and reacting to something that, unfortunately, to a degree, needs to be done. But would we agree that this is how it should be done? I don't believe that we would agree that this is how it needs to be done. But there has to be something done, and I can empathize with that. So from the Canadian point of view, it's like, okay, well, the Americans are literally having a problem with a neighbor, so let's see how they handle it. Now, if I was Korean, or if I was Russian, or if I came from just a different part of the world, it would be viewed in a different context, where it's like, this, what we are observing could easily, very easily, be sold in a negative light, similar to Nazi Germany, and some have called it the Gestapo style, secret policing style, the legitimate disruption of freedoms and liberties. So, like, what's taking place in the United States, the context of what's taking place can easily be sold in that light. And I think that's where the No Kings things come from. And that's where I was going to ask you to make sure that I understood the context, was that this protest is in response to Donald Trump, the current president, utilizing, at this point, I have an understanding where it's illegal forms, illegal measures to try and disperse not even disperse. Disperse is what you do to protesters. What he's trying to do is deport 4% of the fucking nation. Let's not mince words. He's trying to make the United States 4% smaller by deporting a select group of individuals. There was a guy that did that once, right? He had his own country, and then he chose a select group of people, and then he decided that he was going to deport all these people. And the problem that he had is that nobody wanted to actually accept the people he was deporting. In this context, Donald Trump is sending them, if not back to, this is where people need to be very careful at these protests, okay, guys? If you are of Mexican descent, you are going back to one of two places, and not one of them is not back. One is just be your first time there.
Yeah.
But you're going back to Mexico if you're getting deported, if you're caught, and so on and so on. You're going back to Mexico, or if you're caught like committing like a violent offense.
May I interrupt you for a second, Connor? We actually have somebody from the opposite side of the fence here. Sir, if I may, could I get your perspective on the current protest and, where your political ideals would stand in regards to this. I see your sign. I support the president on ice and MAGA. Would you care to give us a little bit of insight as to what you're thinking, what you're feeling? What is the issue for you and people in your position, sir?
I'm just out here because I don't like Marxists and communists, and that's about it.
Okay.
See, and that literally, we were just discussing.
Leaders of our country, and I support the president in that effort. That's about it.
Okay. You too. Thank you, sir. Okay, Connor, go ahead.
See, that's exactly what we were discussing. Easily sold in a negative light, right? So, and it's kind of upsetting because he just illustrated that, like, he doesn't like Marxists and communists and this and that, and it's like what the protesters are trying to say is that the actions being used against the Mexican population to be deported in such a way to deport 4% of the nation out is, if I'm not mistaken, some form of communism, Marxism, what, to just pluck a grouping of people and saying, okay, well, we don't like you anymore, so you're going to go over here. That's got to be quite literally what he was saying that he was against. And you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see a lot of people that have half of the ideology very well cemented, and then they go off into the other half, and quite literally just at the wrong time. And when they go off into the other half, it doesn't help their case or the case that they're supporting, even though they actually are people that don't want this kind of thing to happen.
Yeah.
Right?
And opposite to the contrast of what a lot of people would be arguing, that today is in the United States Flag Day. President Trump wanted to host a parade. Flag Day was not a widely celebrated holiday in the United States, at least not in my lifetime, in contrast to things on and so forth. But a parade honoring the 250th anniversary of the armed forces, specifically the Army. And that was one issue, considering Flag Day also happens to be President Trump's birthday. I think a lot of the argument is that Trump is trying to parade. And a lot of people are viewing what Donald Trump has done, especially in terms of Los Angeles and the riots and demonstrations going on there, as being dictatorisk and stating that he is overstepping his political bounds. Now, here's the thing. It's a little piece of legislation called the Posse Comitatus Act.
That was suspended. Obama suspended that a while back. That doesn't exist anymore. I know what you're referring to, and we.
I looked it up. Posse Comitatus is still in effect. I don't know if it was enacted during the Obama administration and then reactivated in any subsequent. Whether it was reinstituted by the Trump or even the Biden administrations, I cannot say. But from my understanding, the Posse Comitatus Act is still, or at least presently, in effect, and at which point the only time the United States president can intercede on the state level and declare martial law nationally or even in a local area would be under the grounds of an insurrection, enacting the Insurrection Act. Now, the military, I don't know the finer details. If anybody in the comments who's watching has a broader perspective on the matter, please chime in to enlighten me. But from what I understand is that the military has been deployed in assistance to the National Guard, and subsequently the Posse Comitatus Act would be in violation if Trump has not implemented, as of yet, the Insurrection Act. Now, so if anybody could add some context to this as to whether or not Donald Trump has, in fact, instituted the Insurrection Act, or if I am misinformed and the Posse Comitatus Act is no longer in effect in the United States. If we can get some clarification on that, then great. But if in the event that Posse Comitatus is in effect and Trump has not implemented the Insurrection Act, then that's a big no-no on his part. And at which point, Donald Trump would arguably have overstepped his bounds, and such demonstrations as what you are seeing here now would be most certainly valid, and the concerns of the people are most definitely warranted without question.
Absolutely, it would become a requirement at that point. Like you would
absolutely
require the citizenship to stand. Otherwise, the country would begin to falter. So the only point of true clarification, and this is going to sound like the largest oxymoron, but see, the United States Marine Corps, if I understand correctly, is not really a part of the military. Like, yes, it's part of the military. Like, they take on some of the most dangerous missions, and then like we have other forces that are available for you guys to use. But if I understand correctly, the Marine Corps is the only branch of the military that has to do exactly what the president says, whereas the rest of the military branches, as like to say, like, to go into war, you need congressional approval to utilize any of those quote unquote military assets, even if that asset is just an intelligence officer listening to a wiretap for you. If you're using it under military grounds, the Posse Comitatus has to be lifted. Insurrection Act has to be in place. All of those rules must be followed to use these boys and girls and their toys. But from what I understand, those rules don't apply to the Marines, which is why the Californian Coast Guards, or National Guard, sorry, the California National Guard was called back by California. It was like, dude, you're not doing this anymore. And I think it has a lot to do with what you just said.
Yeah, the Marines were implemented. The Marines were brought in to assist the National Guard, because the police were being overwhelmed, and I believe that in some areas, at least in some regards, the National Guard had not yet arrived, and the Marines were, at least for lack of a better term, closer. But again, I believe that martial law can only be implemented on a local level by the local government. And then the next step would be a congressional act, an act of Congress, and then insurrection, the Insurrection Act being put into play by the United States president. But if Posse Comitatus has been lifted by previous President Barack Hussein Obama, then we must argue as to why such an act would have been removed, and at which point Donald Trump would not be in any form of legal wrong in deploying U.S. military on American soil. But it would have to be asked why a Democratic president would implement such a policy, such as to remove Posse Comitatus, to allow for such an event as we are presently witnessing.
I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was so they had all resources required to track Edward Snowden during the WikiLeaks era.
Yes, and that would go, and I cited this many, many times, that a lot of the conflict with Russia started with Edward Snowden and his declaration that the NSA was unlawfully spying on United States citizens, and which forced him to evac the country and seek asylum in Russia, which was granted to him by Vladimir Putin. At which point, diplomatic ties between the United States and Russia went.
Exactly. It's almost like it's all connected. It's weird that way.
It is. And a lot of the problem that we are facing presently, and one of the big reasons we are out here covering this today, is we want to make sure to provide accountability. There has been a lot of protests and that have turned extremely violent. Even locally to me, just a few hours away in Atlanta, Georgia, there has been a lot of violence that has taken place in the past few days. At which point, we have to take into account again the John Podesta plan war games from 2020, where it was stated by John Podesta that if President Trump was elected in 2020, that they would cause a civil uprising resulting in a, for lack of a better term, a George Floyd incident, and they would use that incident to stir civil unrest, cause the blue states, starting with California, to secede from the rest of the United States, sparking a race-based civil war. Now, what concerns me in that matter, and we've addressed this many times before, if in the event that the United States were to go to a civil war incident, states like California and whatnot are relatively isolated. You got the ocean on one side, you've got Mexico to their south, and you're surrounded by swing states and red states. At which point, many of these states will be isolated. They will have no way of establishing supply lines with adjoining seceded states. And at which point, there's total isolation in these said states. California in particular, the white population, who is regarded as racist and essentially has a bullseye on their back, would only makes up 33% of California's population and would effectively be sitting ducks with huge targets on their back, having been labeled as racist, pro-Trump, or whatever, even if they initially voted Democrat. You know, it's guilty by association, for lack of a better term. So, you know, and I have strongly advocated to my friends in California, get out, get out before shit hits the fan. But,
Which ocean is California
people don't listen to me.
Which ocean is California on? Is that in the Atlantic Ocean?
That would be the Pacific Ocean.
Pacific, so the western side of the province, the country.
Yeah, the East Coast would be the Atlantic. Titanic went down in the Northern Atlantic.
Yeah, like 45 minutes from my house. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, no, because I was just like, well, no, if you guys are on the East Coast, I already know that the East Coast of Canada would be very quick to establish an ocean line access. We would make money. We wouldn't care. Like,
Yes.
we would do what needed to be done there. It wouldn't be the first time either that we would help the Americans like that. Like, it's like we opened the Underground Railroad to make sure that Black people had a safe place to go during like actual slavery and like pre-Jim Crow and stuff like that. So it's one of the things that Canada is known for. If we find out that one of your states gets segregated and that someone's trying to teach you a lesson, so to speak, put you in the corner and spank you, we tend to reach out and help those states. Like there's a reason why the United States all have a different story as to why they like Canada until 9/11. Then the whole country loved us for all the same reason. But normally it's the whole country of Canada helping out one state doing something. Sometimes it's the flood, sometimes it's the forest fire. But we would
Squad Rider, yes, we can interview more. I will be covering that down the line. We're just trying to wait for everybody to get here that's going to be here. You know, just kind of give everybody a chance to show up.
So is that the protest line that I'm seeing in front of me there?
Yes, you are looking at the protest line occupying both sides of the street. They are not obstructing traffic. Everybody here so far has been relatively peaceful. There are people on both sides of the fence, like the gentleman I interviewed earlier, who I'm looking at now, wearing the ICE immigration shirt. The vast. Okay, that was interesting. Camel buggy. That just made my day. But yeah, that is the protest. It has been relatively peaceful. A few youth have showed up, but for the most part, I can't really say that I see any migrants. For a migrant issue, it is interesting to see a lack of migrants or any other Hispanics whether whether citizen or non-citizen showing up here.
I can't see shit. All I see is red shirts and blue shirts. It's kind of like the civil war over again.
Yeah, I'm just getting in my bag, getting something to drink really quick. I've been wearing that big ass jacket, so
Yeah. So before the sun goes down, though, you're gonna want to have access to milk, because they're the first thing. Okay, so the first thing that the officers are gonna do, okay, is in order to disperse a large crowd that gets unruly, okay, they're gonna have to start. They're gonna have to do some shit that's like quite legitimately just against the rules. So
and I just locked my keys in the car. I'm an idiot.
oh, there's a criminal there somewhere. I'm sure of it.
Oh yes.
Just find that white hippie looking dude. He can help.
Oh shit.
So
all I wanted was something to drink.
What they're going to do is, and like if you have a sweater or something that you could throw on like underneath your camo jacket, not a bad idea, because rubber bullets and fake shotgun shells, they fucking hurt. And what happens is that the first target, you're gonna know when shit's gonna go bad. You're actually gonna be numbered as like one of the first to know, because the first to get fucked up is the reporters.
Yes. There was a reporter in Los Angeles who was shot by nonviolent bullets. So
right. So just be mindful, and when those things start to happen, like just climb a fucking tree, get a good perspective, and video. But if you're on the ground and you are sticking out like a sore thumb, and the enforcement officers can see that they're being filmed, you're going to catch a couple rubber bullets. They're going to want you to get the hell away so that they can do what they've got to do without being filmed.
yes.
That's why we as protesters have always said that the most powerful weapon we hold is legitimately the camera. Because when all the heated emotions die down, an impartial judge will be asked to view the tapes.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to set you down and see if I can pry the window down a little bit here.
Yeah.
Let's just set the camera here. Let it video.
And then there's always the unfortunate part of everything. Like this could be like the reason why the United States would require civil unrest, like in a presidential way, like let no bad thing go unutilized kind of situation. It's an amazing smokescreen. While everybody is watching live streams similar to ours, they're watching the news, they're hearing the stories, and oh, it's just so exciting, right? No one's paying attention to anything else right now.
No, exactly. And I've been waiting for Revan to get online. He's not popped online yet. He's supposed to be covering our international media, letting us know what's going on around the world, but I've not seen him on yet.
And you may not. Who knows?
Yeah, he might actually wind up doing a live stream on his own protest there. So I really can't say for sure.
But that would actually be really cool if he was at his and you were at yours, and then like you guys are networking together. Now it's beginning to be a lot like the Occupy movement.
Yes.
And that's a word that the law enforcement officers really don't want anybody whispering too loud, because right now they're just protests, right? You know what the difference in a protest and the Occupy movement was? You know what the fundamental difference was?
What was that?
They didn't leave.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing. Like, we have not seen a protest like Occupy Wall Street in a very long time. I mean, yes, you have the Black Lives Matter protests, but we really haven't seen anything on par with Occupy Wall Street. I mean, even the Million Mask March was not.
The trucker protest.
The trucker protest. Oh, that was a good point. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, because we actually like suspended national liberties and everything for that thing. Like they did what the Occupy movement did. They just did not leave. And now they're slowly and very quietly winning in court. That's why we don't hear about it anymore, because if they were losing, it would be all over the news.
Yeah, a lot of people weren't familiar with that protest because it happened in Canada. But go ahead and
Yeah.
elaborate just a little bit
Well, that
for
was
our.
just it's kind of a similar level of importance as to what's taking place today. Right now, we're focusing on 4% of the nation being deported, so that kind of sucks. What was happening in Canada was we were protesting the COVID measures, the extremely heightened COVID measures, whereas like people were losing their jobs because they were refusing to get a vaccine and so on and so forth. So before it all went to absolute pot, the truckers said no more. So they literally, every province, all the truckers got together, they put themselves together, they all drove to the nation's capital, which was Ottawa, and they literally parked truck in front, and they shut the entire city down. Like, people pitched tents in the middle of the road because there was no traffic coming, because you couldn't get past the 18-wheeler that was blocking the road.
Okay.
Right, so it was very touch and go, to the point like they the protest organizers, when they had GoFundMe's and everybody from all over the world was giving money to help the protest, the government froze the bank accounts.
Um, Squad Rider, I do not know if the Telehomo protest was at 10 a.m. or 11. I only saw mine, but you can search for No Kings protest in that area, and it should bring up the website that will have the times and location for the event.
Guys, if you don't know what time you're supposed to be there, just show up, bring water, sit back, relax, watch the crowd. You're allowed to be the
Yes.
first on site.
Yes, absolutely. Now, usually, if these protests turn violent, it's usually from what I've read, the initial real protesters will show up, and then an hour after is when the dissenters, the agents of chaos, will pop on the scene and start causing trouble. Would that
So
be a fair analogy?
yes, it's a very fair assessment. So what you're going to be looking to notice here is, as your daylight begins to dim out, right? You're going to see a grouping of people, and this is going to be very interesting. They're either going to have backpacks, or they're going to look a little heavier set than they're supposed to be. So either A, they have black clothing on under what they're wearing, or they have black clothing in a backpack with them, and they're going to mask up, and they're going to do the whole black bloc nonsense. I don't know if you guys have black bloc in the United States, but I know we have black bloc in Canada. And these guys, they're legitimate expert protesters, and these are not people that are funded by no. These are like the opposite. This is what everybody wishes that they could be, that these are hardcore protesters who know how to shake and move the system. And everybody's like, why do protesters always destroy their own city, right? Is that not always the question you hear?
Yeah,
It's because,
that is a.
so the logic attached to it is this. Now, just because
Yeah, that probably wasn't very smart considering you had a dude had a red light right in front of him.
the amount of fucks
He
that people,
just gunned it and almost rear-ended the person in front of him and was stopped at a red light.
well, you guys got to be very, very careful right now, because there's a lot of law enforcement that are telling drivers that, like, you don't have to be swarmed and mobbed, that you can drive right through these people. So you're going to see a lot of reckless driving as well, right? So you're going to want to stay safe in that aspect. But getting back to the more hardcore protester question, is that the reason why people destroy their own cities is because it costs money
Did everybody in the area with the cost?
it costs the city money for the repairs. And then everybody's like, yeah, but that's just your tax dollars being used to repair it. And be like, absolutely. And when that politician becomes to be accused of spending too much tax dollars on the repairs for protesters, the logical answer to that problem is, well, maybe the politicians should pay more attention to his people so that they didn't have to protest. And if they didn't have to protest, they wouldn't be destroying the city, and the city wouldn't have to foot the bill for the repairs. So a large repair bill after a protest, it actually is, it's the report card for the politicians' work ethic. Good politicians that reach out to the people, speak to the people adequately, know what the people want, deliver what the people want. Those politicians, they don't face a whole lot of protest and scrutiny, and they don't have a lot of bills to pay to repair cities because there hasn't been a lot of protests. So people will always say, well,
Movement that was going to be everywhere but where Trump is. So my question is, if your movement is directed at somebody, why would you wish to avoid them?
To protect yourself from only one very specific charge: terrorism.
Yeah, especially considering his parade would be in Washington, D.C. with very large crowds of people.
Yeah, the only thing you guys could have done would have been to take every single protest in the nation and go be a counter protest to the parade. But then you guys would have been up against some serious firepower. You'd have been up against Secret Service protection details, like shoot on sight if you get too close. It gets way too dicey. The last time we saw an accident like that happen was when the Black Panther Party accidentally walked on I think it was the Congress floor or the Senate. I think it was the Senate. One of the two big floors in the United States.
I'm going to cut you off for a second. We got a young lady here who's about to go live, make an announcement here. This can give us a little bit of insight.
Want us to make sure. All right, if you guys have a moment, you want to come and chit chat, we're going to do a quick little speech. If you guys didn't hear already, I am Victoria Broadick, and I'm running for Congress in Tennessee's District 4. Yeah, because we don't like fascism here, do we? Yeah. Where's the Trumpy? All right, thank you guys so much for coming out today. I really, really appreciate it. As you can see, if you were here last time, I didn't have a speaker, so I had to scream this, and I decided that my campaign could afford me to have a microphone and a speaker, because, I'm fun size and feral. Yeah. All right, so I decided to run for Congress, if you guys didn't know, because Scott Desjardins, whose office is right here, decided was going to run unopposed in 2024, and I said, over my dead body. So here I am. But my political journey did start with the idea that I was going to run for office. My political journey, in fact, I never thought I'd be here. But I decided in 2016 that I couldn't stay silent anymore because fascism was on the horizon. And unfortunately, fascism is here today. So what did I do? When we moved back to Tennessee, I said, I want to see better representation in Tennessee. I want to help make it better. So I got involved with our local Lincoln County Democratic Party. Yes. Yeah. And then a little bit later, after Roe was overturned, that's when everything really changed for me. So in 2021, my IUD failed. I became 1% of the population who is on birth control, specifically IUDs, that it failed for me. And over the course of 6 weeks, I had to figure out what we were going to do, the dangers that could come with an IUD pregnancy. And, it was an emotional ride. Unfortunately, I miscarried. And that was a hard thing to go through. But everyone knows when you're pregnant, it can be a little bit of a roller coaster. But luckily for me, I got pregnant a month later with my second child, who is not here today. And we don't quite trust him because he's not supposed to be here, but we adore that little dude. And about 4 months after he was born, Roe was overturned. The thing that they said was written law, they wouldn't get rid of it, and here we are in a Roe-less world, and that's not good for us. So I decided, that's it. I'm going to start screaming at people on the internet. And so I created a TikTok that's called the Friendly Neighborhood Liberal. And I started talking about politics and why you should vote and why you should be involved and why educating yourself in our political system is important. I became county chair in Lincoln County, Tennessee, and I remained chair for the last 2 years until I found out Desjardins was going to run unopposed. And that's how I ended up here today. Activism is a muscle. You have to work it. If you don't, fascism happens. So I'm encouraging every single one of you. I want to empower every single one of you to pick one thing and push back against this fascist administration. I want to empower you to be on the field because politics is not a spectator sport. The reason we are here today is too many of us did not stand up faster, did not stay engaged because we thought that we were above it as the greatest country in the world. And unfortunately for us, somebody who wants to make America great again isn't in fact great for this country.
Right on.
So when you join me on the field, your decision has to be one of two. Be a player on the field and help me get elected and help me turn this around. Or that the Republicans work on. Because that is what they want. They want you to feel like you're the turf. They want you to feel like there is no hope and no power. And I'm here to tell you that's not the case. I'm here and I'm willing to fight. I don't need you to fight with me, but I would love it if you stood beside me while we take on this regime. While we take on people like Scott Desjardins, who hasn't hosted a town hall since 2013. He's an elected representative, and he doesn't have the cojones to show up in Tennessee, in his district, and face all of us. Even though Republicans know that he's a crap representative, because he doesn't represent working class Americans who are just trying to make sure their groceries aren't too expensive, their gas isn't too expensive, and their health care doesn't run them into a car.
Power to the women.
Yeah, and power to our women. We have an opportunity in 2026 to elect people who don't believe in radical ideas like the right and the maggots want you to believe. We have a chance to elect safety, affordability, and freedom. I don't know when that became a radical idea, but the fact that I care about people should not be considered radical. It should not be considered radical to say, hey, Black, brown, and indigenous people are being treated inhumanely in our country, and that's unacceptable. It shouldn't be a 33-year-old going into a town hall with Janice Bowling and knowing more about the Constitution than an elected official. Janice Bowling said this week that if you are on American soil, you do not have rights to due process. That doesn't sound like an American thing to me. I don't know about you all. And she's an elected official. Vote her out. Vote Scott Desjardins out. These are representatives who think that they are above it. Your representatives are no different than the person who serves you coffee, and they should treat the job as such. My job is to represent you. My job is to talk about what's going on in District 4 and make sure that every single one of you is taken care of, including the the fascists across the street who think that somehow being a Trump supporter is a good thing. I'm sorry. You guys care so much about criminality, yet you voted for a felon. Miss me with your fake outrage about illegal immigrants at the border. There's nothing illegal about people on stolen land. That's not a radical idea. But hey, Republicans, if you want a representative who's actually here, because I know every single one of the people who came to this protest actually want representation that represents you. I'm here to represent you too. I know that my rights don't stop because you have your beliefs. My rights are my rights. Enough about that. Guys, safety, affordability, and freedom are not radical concepts. And every single one of us is going to have to get 10 people to go to the polls in 2026 because we know in midterm elections, we have a bigger chance of flipping this district. So I need every single one of you pick one thing that you're supportive of, one thing that you need to make change. And don't forget, joy is resistance. Be a part of the resistance. Be Luke Skywalker.
No, not
Doing the Empire. This is in the First Order. We're not good with all that. Darth Vader is not welcome here. Andrew Palpatine is not welcome here. So
That's a
guys,
new one. I've not heard that.
enjoy No King's Day. Keep it peaceful. Scream out because no Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA. No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA. No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA.
Trump, fascist.
Hey, man. Look, you found a politician.
Thank
We
you
were
guys so much for
those
being here.
people.
I'm Victoria Broadick. I'm
Right.
running for Congress in Tennessee's District 4. If you believe in working class values, if you believe that your representatives should actually represent you, then vote for me. I will show you what hard work looks like. I will show you what care looks like. I won't be a coward who won't come down to talk to you. This is my job. No more tacos in this country. We don't
I like
need
tacos.
that. We need representation and Democrats and progressives who speak out against these atrocities and speak out for your rights, because every single one of you deserves that. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a lovely day.
You got my vote. Hey!
Now go shake the woman's hand.
Say again?
Go shake the woman's hand before she gets crowded by a bunch of people. Thank her
Well
for her. Thank you. Thank you. There you go.
I'm Chris with the Worldwide Resistance Network, an independent political activist movement. If I may, we do have a moment for a few off-the-side questions. As far as I know, you're running for local governments, but on the national stage, as far as our audience who may be right, left, or even somewhere falling in the middle, what would you have to say in regards to the general audience on a global scale, or even just the national scale?
Yeah, so your representation matters. Politics is like public transportation. You're not looking for a perfect fit. You're not buying a home. You're just going to public transportation. Get on the bus to get you closer to the location you're going to and ride that. And if you ever need to go in reverse, go in reverse. But that is what our democracy is, and that's how we make a difference in our country, is every single person being involved and being empowered to be involved.
Okay. If elected, what are some of the things you plan to bring to the table? Some of the changes you would like to make, and overall, what you would like to see if given that position?
I want to make sure that our rights are protected. You know, every single person deserves rights to healthcare. So I'd like to see Medicaid for all. I would like to make sure, or Medicare for all, I apologize. I would like to see it so it's easier to have children and safer to have children in this country. I would like to make sure that our education is overfunded, because education is the key. Education is elevation, as one of my friends says, consciously. And I want to make sure that we can take care of the American public and make sure that we are putting our tax dollars where they belong and not giving handouts to corporations and billionaires.
Okay. In regards to those who would be in general opposition, the arguments that would be made, such as immigration policies by previous administrations, such as Obama, Clinton, and so on and forth. What would you say in regards to those issues where the argument is being made that Trump is not necessarily doing anything different than previous, even Democratic administrations have done?
Look, our immigration system needs to be fixed. We need to make it more reliable for people who want to come to this country. We need to fund it enough so that we have border patrol, that we have judges who can process these cases, so that people aren't waiting 7 years to become a U.S. citizen. I feel like Republicans and Democrats have negatively affected the immigration process and used it as an electability thing. And we should fix it, because that shouldn't be something that we all have to worry about.
Okay, so what on that subject, what recommendations off the top of your head would you suggest?
So, I mean, we need to make sure that we're funding our border security and making sure that we have enough judges and people who can represent those coming into our country, so they're properly processed and given easier access so they can start working faster and contributing, and as well as get their immigration. So it's less than 7 years. So the average is about 7 years. So we want to make sure that it's easier and a little bit more affordable.
Okay. In response to your side of the fence, the Democratic Party, You have a lot of these protests nationwide. Many of them have already gone violent. We've seen what's happened in LA. There's instances in Georgia where things are getting violent. What would you say to people participating in these events and how they should conduct themselves and affect real change?
Protests are how our country started. We started by throwing tea in the harbor. So I don't look at violence. I do know that there's violence. So if you're here, sit down. If you're here, if you're at a protest, make sure that you are listening to police officers, moving through, pay attention, be courteous. But at the other side of that, if it turns violent, it's because it's been agitated. We wouldn't have these protests if people's rights were not being violated. If we address those issues now, we're less likely to have these in the future.
Okay, well, I'm a little gray on the rights versus national point. Go ahead, my friend.
I was just saying, you make sure to thank that lady and shake her hand. She's doing everything she can. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, absolutely. And one last question, so you can clarify for the audience, what rights are afforded to non-nationals versus that of nationals?
Every person on U.S. soil has the right to due process. It's included in our 5th Amendment and our 14th Amendment. There was also a case, I can't remember the name, but it was in 2001 when Clinton tried to do something similar to what Trump is doing. The Supreme Court said absolutely not. Every person on U.S. soil, no matter your status, is afforded the right to due process.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Any last parting words before I go?
I'm Victoria Broadick. I'm running for Congress in Tennessee's District 4 against Scott Desjardins. Thank you guys. Stay hydrated, vote blue.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Migrate my way back across the street where it's a little more quiet so we can continue our commentary and get a broader view.
Man, we
go ahead, Connor, take it.
We couldn't have planned that if God himself had said, let that politician be right there when they're done talking.
Yeah.
Like, that was very well put together. And you can clearly see that that's an individual on the blue side trying her damnedest to get her point across.
Yeah, and I noticed she didn't shy away from the question of, what about what previous Democratic presidents have done in regards, how is this any different, what Trump is doing in contrast to what they were doing? I know she did not really shy away from that. She even cited where Bill Clinton was in the wrong in terms of something he was trying to do.
It appears, and like politicians are politicians, but it appears as though she would be now I'm probably inventing a term here, but it would be like an accountable Democrat or an accountable Republican, whereas this particular politician knows that the ones that came before them made mistakes and is willing to admit that those mistakes are very real and that they have created a problem that they're currently facing, and that understanding that was a mistake made by their own party, that they want the party to be held accountable and they want to enact the necessary change. That trait inside of a politician is reasonably rare. You kind of found not just a politician, you kind of found a good one.
Yeah, whether they be red or blue, I mean, common sense is common sense. And she straight up admitted, Clinton did what she would perceive to be wrong. When you can sit there and call out your own party, it's like, okay, this guy in my party did something bad, I don't condone it. That's big, regardless of whether you agree with the policy or you don't. The fact of the matter is that this person actually addressed it and owned it and said, this does not align. That's actually pretty big.
Right. And to backtrack, and like you could even like edit it out and make a separate video, but like there was a segment where I said like protests are normally the product of poor political work, right? That woman said that the representative of that area hasn't held a town hall since 2013. That individual hasn't cared about the people's opinion since then.
Yeah.
Right. And then people could say, well, COVID was 2019, 2020. What happened between 2013? So 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. The better part of 19 before COVID actually hit. Those are a lot of years of not caring about a person's opinion. So the the lack of public interest, the lack of going to the public after COVID, he doesn't really have a leg to stand on and blame the pandemic. This guy was lazy from go.
Yeah.
So that's yeah, man. He's got a good opponent in her already.
Agreed. And if he wants to get reelected, he definitely needs to take a more vested interest in his community, in the people, and doing something. Here in Winchester, we had an issue recently with Winchester Utility System, where they accused what they claim was a former employee of not doing his job and reading the meters, and ergo, a vast majority of the residents in Winchester, Tennessee, had to pay back utilities on what the utility company claimed that they owed. Me personally, I wound up having to pay over $1,000 in conjunction with my regular bill and what they said I owed in back usage.
Oh.
And even an attorney said, that's outrageous. Like, there's no way that a single adult, even living in a 3-bedroom house by himself, should be generating that much electricity, especially if he's not even home the majority of the time. Warrants looking into. Now, if you have elected officials, like the city council and whatnot, who are not taking a vested interest in the community and, holding people accountable, at which point politics, whether local on up, can run amok.
Right. Yeah, no, and your interview style, your questioning there, I really, really appreciated how you conducted that. That was fucking bang on, man. That's how it's done, dude. Like, that was really good.
No, I mean, I don't really go for ambush journalism. I mean, there's a whole mess of questions that could have been posed that could really just kind of undermine things and probably get my ass beat in this crowd. You pick and choose your battles.
Right, and you can ask a hard question in an appropriate manner, and that normally the person that's got to answer, they feel safe in delivering the answer. You know what I mean? Like, you did that very, very well. And so, like, when I was like, okay, well, now shake the lady's hand and thank her for everything, it's mainly because I was observing her behavior, and she was very enthusiastic and happy of taking on this interview with you, and I wanted to make sure that literally every second and every word that was shared between the two of you held and maintained that enthusiasm, so that at no point she walked away from the interview feeling like she wasted her time.
Yeah. And we don't want people to feel like their time is wasted. I mean, activism, as she pointed out, is a crucial part of this country, but there is a difference between activism and civil unrest. I mean, what happened in Los Angeles, throwing cinder blocks at cop cars and police officers, these are human beings. Whether there be corrupt police officers or racist law enforcement is irrelevant. These are still human beings deserving as much of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as the migrants whom you are fighting for. So in that argument, we would have to say that there is a huge difference between rioting and bringing harm to human life and making an effective demonstration. I can't really say that anything like the Million Mask March or Occupy Wall Street really escalated to the violence we're seeing in places like Los Angeles and other major democratic cities.
It's mainly because Donald Trump is heavily painted as a racist, right? Like, we all know that the actual truth and the numbers and so on and so forth, but he's not a racist individual, but they paint him as such. And when you do that, you get the anti-racist people all riled up, and that's a large grouping of people, because that grouping of people is not any one particular color. Man, there's white people that are in that group that do not agree with racism. So when you can grasp,
there's an insider for you sitting there flipping the bird.
well, that escalated quickly. Here we were having a nice conversation.
Yeah. Yep. and I posted it publicly. don't antagonize, don't escalate a situation. You know, we all have a right to protest, whether we individually agree or disagree with any given policy that is being protested on. Everybody has the right to protest, has the right to peaceful protest, not to sit there, destroy your community and harm and even possibly kill the individuals within your community. But you do have the right to protest, absolutely, regardless of whether you believe in what the people are protesting.
So the only excuse me, the only actual worry that a peaceful protester has, and it's a very legitimate worry. So like don't think that this one's just a light one. It's a French term, okay, and English people use it as well, but it's agent agent provocateur is what it is, and
Translate, please.
it's a provoking agent. Okay, so
Yes.
inside of a peaceful protest where none of the individuals involved have chosen to utilize violence as one of the tools to get their message across, you will have an individual. Now, back in the day, it used to just be like an undercover police officer would go in and sucker punch his buddy, and then it would all just kind of get up and running. And then the police would have grounds to use force to disperse the crowd. So this is the largest worry that can ever be found inside of a peaceful protest. People like us, the Worldwide Resistance Network, we're supposed to be in tuned enough to spot that person. It's unfortunately, it's a job that nobody wants to do. Someone has to do it, but someone actually has to find the agent provocateur and point him out to the protest organizers. Why? Because the protest organizers, as American citizens, hold the right to ask the police to remove the provoking agent so as to not create a violent clash. That's inside of their rights. And that's a toolbox that when protesters use really upsets the police force. Because now the police force have to remove either A, their own provoking agent, or now they have an arrest without a violent altercation, which means they don't have cause to disperse the crowd. So being a protester is probably like one of the most gangster things ever, except gangsters don't call the cops when you fuck around. A protester will, and that's what makes it so much more dicier. So, yeah,
I have seen a very strong police presence here. There you have your local Winchester Police Department. I've seen some state troopers and even sheriff's department cruising through here.
yeah.
You got an unmarked right down there across the street at the corner at that light. So there is a relatively strong police presence there at this protest today. The next protest in the adjacent town of Tullahoma, Tennessee, I don't know how that's going. My buddy Robert said he was thinking about going down there and attending, but I hadn't really heard anything from him in regards to how that might be going or if he even attended. But I do want to shift gears to some of the other issues that aren't really being brought to light as far as like a lot of the local communities and elected politicians are concerned, and that is the John Podesta plan of 2020, the war games plan that if Donald Trump was to be elected, he was going to incite chaos, create civil unrest, and essentially cause another George Soros for the purposes of causing the states to secede from the Union and start a civil war in an attempt to usurp Trump from power.
So what you have to do in order to get that story and adequately like disclosed is you have to go to the other side. You're going to have to go to the red side. There's a counter protest going on right now somewhere.
Yeah, there are a few people mingled within these protests that are for the red. There are a few individuals like the gentleman across the street that I interviewed earlier.
Yep.
Most everybody here is blue aligned.
Well, find one of them red
Like
ones.
that young lady said there, this is a joyful protest.
Well, it should be.
I can't say that I would really disagree with how these people are conducting themselves. I'm very happy to see that the people in my community, regardless of their political ideologies, are relatively, for the most part, conducting themselves in a professional, ethical, and patriotic manner. I can't really say that I would disagree with how things are going today. But I would disagree with the fact that George Soros and so many others are delivering pallets of bricks and having their organizers and subsequent protesters who are paid to go in and incite riots and conflict, causing destruction, mayhem, and in some cases even death or dismemberment, all for the purpose of usurping this country and causing civil unrest. At which point we need to look into the broader scale of things. If this country descends into chaos and goes into civil war, how's the rest of the world going to respond to that, Connor?
Well, it's going to go in a lot of different directions. People are going to get worried. Excuse me, I just take my medication. So the problem here is that if the United States goes inside of a civil war or civil unrest, like, you guys are already seeing negative impact just because you're disagreeing. Your economy is not looking the very best because you guys can't get behind your president kind of situation. And that's just having slight disagreements. That's like literally just having an argument on Twitter. Like, you know, it's kind of messed up. Now, if we get into the civil war part, you're going to see certain states get segregated out, other states grouping together. There's going to be false senses of security that will create themselves. Then there'll be an area inside of the landmass that will be stronger than all of them, and that'll be the quote unquote safest place to live. But that will, because that is the safest place to live, it will run the risk of becoming extremely Orwellian, just because it'd be like, yeah, well, if you don't like it here, you can go live over there. And it's not just another country anymore. It's just a 20-minute drive to cross the state line, and you can go live over there now. And with the ability to, oh man, this is going to be a really stupid analogy, but see, in Canada, we have somewhat of a housing crisis that's happening right now. And then, so back in the day, if you wanted to go rent somewhere to live, you could go take a look at like 15 or 20 different places, pick the one that you wanted, and sign the contract. Today, every place that's available is being looked at by 15 or 20 people, and the landlord gets to choose the tenant to sign the contract with. Where back in the day, like, the landlord was lucky that you even showed up. So because the housing was just so available, the housing is a little less available now, and we see negative consequences. Well, in the event of a civil war, this housing situation that I just described, it would apply to entire flipping states, where it's like the state would be able to pick and choose who lives with them, because there's just so many people that want to live with them, which in this context, we're doing full circle. As it stands, that's a decision that's made on a national country level, where the country gets to decide how many people are allowed to immigrate to it, because there's so many people that want to immigrate to it that they could easily say no to the first 100 and say yes. And
there.
right, so it gets,
you don't like the gas prices, yeah? You just blew $20.
Ain't that the truth? It's all right. We're at war. We're gonna fix the gas prices.
It's like that guy that drove past and freaking exhausted everybody with his diesel. That was nuts.
Right. So if you could,
I'm gonna keep talking. I'm gonna mute my. I'm gonna go talk to the doctor in private real quick. I'm going to talk.
Yep. So what I'm looking to see now would be to have an interview with law enforcement.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm not trying to take you away from this. I just want to try to get it somebody beforehand.
And I would get all three perspectives.
No, but I can look it up.
Okay.
On this one particular stream, it gives the viewer a better idea of what they're watching.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Sorry,
but
I was talking to one of the officers to see about getting the keys out of my car.
oh, and do they have a Slim Jim?
Yes, they have everything they need. They just said at the end of the protest, go ahead and hit one of them up, and they'll get me out.
Perfect. So you know what you know what's happening here. You've created opportunity, because I don't know if you heard what I said to the viewership, but what I'd like to see on this live stream before it ends is to get an interview on the red side. So to look for the most hardcore guy that's going to actually, or girl that's going to speak to you, that is on the Trump side, and then ask them a string of questions in the exact same light that you did with the blue side. Tailor make it for them to the very best that you can. Ask the hard questions in a nice way, as all Canadians should. And then when the police unlock your car for you, get
The
a.
thing is, I'm really not seeing any red protesters too much.
Well, you'll find one after
Like, there
supper.
was red protester sighted, but I've only ever seen the one guy.
Yeah.
From what I'm looking at, most deport orange Russians. I mean, this is what we're seeing. I'm not really seeing anybody on the quote red side of the fence here, except for that one gentleman I interviewed earlier.
Yeah. Okay. Well, see, now this is going to be the interesting part. Is that one gentleman going to be your agent Kata?
Yeah, tangerine taco. That's interesting.
Tangerine
What's
taco.
a
That's a
tangerine
great
taco?
ingredient to put in a taco.
Like in a food context, like how would a tangerine taco taste?
Oh, dude, that would be awesome.
That sounds very interesting. Like they're saying no tacos, but Mexicans make tacos. If you want to keep the Mexicans, you don't want to get rid of the tacos.
Well, no, that's almost racist. You're going to get rid of the Mexican and keep their food? Oh, man. The world we live in, bro.
Popped in earlier. I don't know where he went. I messaged him to come back.
Let's come back. We miss you.
Yeah, it's kind of hard for me to see my screen, so I'm just kind of pointing and shooting. That's why I got to go to the shade every now and again to see what's being written in the comments.
Oh, because you can't read the screen.
Here we got a Trump Vance gentleman.
There you go. There you go. See, I told you they show up after supper.
Yeah, there we go. I'll hit him up after a while and get his point of view here.
That's right.
Because he's walking up and down the way. I'm not going to sit there and chase him down, ambush journalism, all that.
Because what unfortunately, and what the American people are looking for, or for lack of a better word, should be looking for, is on one side, which is the red side, there's a very just legitimate law, legal procedure. This is how we're going to do things. And then on the other side, it'd be like, yeah, but we understand that you're just following the letter of the law and you just got to do things, but you got to recognize that it's affecting some people. So can we make some adjustments in how we do things so that we can keep these people and extradite these people? And can we establish a better system of screening, right? And
yes,
they need the individual that understands both sides of the viewpoint to sell that to the American people. That is a problem. That the problem has adequately been recognized clearly because there's protests all over the nation. And the solution to that problem is not no immigration or more immigration. It is how we allow people in and how we ask them to leave. Those laws have to be heavily scrutinized, damn near rewritten. Trump could even make a committee, a bipartisan committee.
You see this just now, two people on opposing sides of an issue got along. Sir, is that a friend of yours? Is that a friend of yours?
I know, dude.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to say, that was very commendable. You got two people on opposing sides of the issue actually getting along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't see that every day.
That's amazing to see. See, this is what I like.
It's because you guys are a constitutional republic. That's how it's supposed to be. It's the viewpoint
Sir,
of the one
may I borrow you
percent.
to ask a couple questions?
No, thank you, sir.
No, thank you. All right. You have a good day.
Right, and that's how you do it. That's proper journalism. It's eventually someone's gonna say yes. Someone's gonna. Now they might come up to you mean and angry at first there, so don't get offended, right? Because they might think you're just a shit disturber,
Yeah.
right? So like you just gotta just float that boat and see where it goes.
Yep. Maintain professionalism, be respectful and courteous. And that's what I was saying for the past several days when I was talking on the independent forums in the local community. You know, I don't care which side of the fence you are on. We all have the right to protest. That's all well and great. You know, let's keep it peaceful. Let's keep it friendly. Let's not let George Soros win that fight and prompt us to rip each other to pieces needlessly.
Quite legitimately. Like, and you see, like these are just they're Americans, man. They just want to make a better place for people who are coming from a horrible situation. This protest is of value. It's the severe communications disconnect that is negatively impacting this, like in such a.
No, but thank you. Like people are actually being nice.
Right, like the guy that actually represents that should be there. Whether he's on the blue side or on the red side, you should be able to interview that individual. It should be that easy, but he's not present.
Yeah. I mean, people like their privacy. They don't want to be bothered. You know,
He doesn't have privacy. He's a
they want to
public
have their say. You
figure.
know, I offer them the chance to have that say.
Yeah.
But if they don't want to talk to us, they don't have to talk to us.
No, they don't. I'm talking about the guy that didn't have a town hall since 2013. The current leader of that district, the guy that lady is running against, he should be there.
Yeah.
This is a national protest, a national issue. He should be there with his people. It's almost disgraceful, and that's like that's a personal attack from me to him. That's not me saying that I'm blue party and that I'm all about the red side, or like the red side should be slapping and spanking him for not being present. He had an opportunity to be with the opposition and hear their viewpoint out.
And this is a predominantly red state. So the fact that we don't see many red protesters in opposition, what we've seen their opinion and their thoughts, or even this elected official who is in a representation of the community in which he serves on the red side, especially in a red state, is extremely disheartening because, you know, as you said, this is a national issue. This affects everybody, whether locally or nationally, and is something that he should be weighing in on. Definitely not inciting conflict, but definitely being there with his community, at least to offer a different perspective. You know, what I would like to see is, instead of politicians arguing with each other and going, okay, I want this, and the opposite going, no, we don't want this, period. You have this woman who's running for an elected office saying, standing in the middle ground, is like, okay, we need to fix it this way. Not saying for or against an issue, yes or no. They're finding the middle ground. Just like I've always preached since the day we started doing this, was people finding the middle ground. You know, regardless of where we stand on any issues, finding the middle ground. And the fact that you actually have an elected, or somebody who's running to be an elected official, who is actually saying, we need to find a middle ground. We don't need to be total opposition to each other, is actually kind of heartening. It is very heartening, not disheartening, but very heartening.
It's heartwarming. It makes you have a little bit more faith in the system again.
Yeah. And, this he looked like somebody, who wasn't brought up in the whole political spectrum, didn't go to Yale and get diddled in Bohemian Grove kind of thing. But, just looks like somebody in the community who has taken some issues, has some ideas, and wants to move forward. Whether you agree with them or you don't, you can respect that, hey, somebody in your community who is a member of your community is standing up and saying, hey, let's do something about this. Let's not just oppose it. Let's just fix it. Fix the damn problem.
Be the change you want to see in the world. And I think that's ringing vibrantly. That lady used the language like the word resistance and things like that. Like, you kind of have to have your finger on the pulse to be able to use that language properly, right? She said Luke Skywalker, and I was like, no, be John Connor.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, bro.
Right? Like, you're doing it wrong, but you got the right idea. You're just doing it wrong. Punch with your right, not with your left. You'll be okay. It's
Well, I mean, they are left, so.
Right? Yeah, this is
I mean,
true.
Rocky Balboa was a southpaw, so why not?
Right? Yeah, and he won a couple fights.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you give it to him. But the fact of the matter is, most Democrats, that wouldn't be a very popular talking point to say we need immigration reform. We need to make things better. A lot of the Democrats essentially be screaming, just say, fuck the border and, let everybody in. At which point, why not just Mexico become the next state in the union at that point?
Because the that order that we dislike so much, the New World Order and all of that stuff, like, okay, let's do an interesting, ridiculous segue
synopsis.
Yeah, right. But like, when like Adolf Hitler's Germany was doing a bunch of stuff, and then he wanted to do all these things.
Effectively,
right?
United States taking Mexico would be Hitler invading Poland.
Well, it's not that. It's that once when he would say like most of these people happen to be Jewish, and you're saying things like that, right? Well, when we talk of things like the New World Order, like a good portion of them happen to be Democrats, right? So, so understanding this aspect of things, the reason why these individuals want to do away with borders is because they need to do away with the Canadian and Mexican border in order to create the North American Union. Because the final step for the New World Order is the joining of the 4 intercontinental unions, which is the African Union, the Asian Union, the European Union, and the North American Union.
Yes.
Right. So that makes do you notice how Russia is not really involved in that union?
No, they're not.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, because the European Union wants to break up Russia into 5 pieces through what, a 13 to 30-year war?
Could be something of the nature. I just think
blow them to fucking shit.
Yeah, I think we just want to nuke the hell out of it so all the snow melts and we can see the fun shit under the ice. I think that
wow.
I think that's what World War III is going to be all about. Because you know how like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, those were the targets that ended the Second World War.
Yes.
Which targets do we really want to speculate would be the quote unquote final targets of the Third World War? I'm really starting to believe that this is how I think it's going to go down. Okay, because yesterday with the whole Israeli and Iranian thing, that kind of went to pot, right? Like,
yeah, they went full on dick measuring contest for a long time, and then somebody just walks up and just slaps the other in the face with their own dick.
Right. So, and you know how I was saying these protests, they were just a disguise so people wouldn't hear or see what was actually going on in the world. So I'm going to create a weapon here. We are covering the event that everybody's supposed to be looking at, but I'm going to talk about the events that everybody wishes everybody would just shut up about.
Yeah. And the reason we're going to do this is because if you look at what's going on here locally, on the local stage. If things go to shit here locally, on the international scale, that's opportunity for others to capitalize. Kick the United States when it's down. If
Yes.
we enter a moment of weakness and the rest of the world sees weakness and dissension and sees a crack in the armor, that's opportunity to strike. If they see an opening, they can and probably would use it.
So this is so I'm going to get all very sophisticated here, but like I'm not lying. This is a very important thing. I'm not lying, and what I'm about to say is reasonably scary. Okay, so check this out. The United States holds the international reserve currency, right? You know that, right?
Yes.
Okay, we safeguard the world's reserve currency with the military. Okay, that's how that's done. The reason why we trade in American dollars is because American dollars are safe, because you have to destroy the American military before you can destroy the American dollar. Like that's the order of operations. In order to screw something over, you have to destroy their military, which then in turn destroys their economy, which in turn destroys their nation. Okay, so the United States dollar is the world reserve currency on the basis and pretext that the United States military's got its back. We understand that aspect, right? So now, moving forward to what just took place. Israel decided to undertake an aerial campaign and struck a shit ton of in-house on Iranian soil their nuclear program. So the question that the Worldwide Resistance Network holds is, does Iran have the bomb? Because if they have the bomb, it doesn't matter if you destroyed the research facility. They already know how to make it now. Doesn't matter if you've destroyed X, Y, or Z. If the bomb is already created and adequately hidden, it is now a nuclear threat. So the question is, do they have the bomb? If they do not have the bomb, then everything Israel did will make it so that they cannot get the bomb. If they have it, everything that Israel did just fucking poked the bear. So this is why this is important, because Iran is sending weapons to Russia to help fight Ukraine in order to help the Americans in their effort to help the Ukrainians interrupt the Iranian weapon supply to the Russians. Israelis had to attack Iran and create a war so that Iran is no longer in an economic situation to sell weapons to Russia because they need them at home. Oh, that was a mouthful to spit out. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So no, now why am I thinking that Russia is where the last World War III targets are going to land? Is for this reason. Israel has attacked Iran. Now, yesterday, Iran retaliated, which means that when they okay, before I get all fucked up here, Iran did an airstrike against Israel just recently. Because of that, the United States is going to be asked to defend Israel against the nation of Iran. This is a situation and a decision Donald Trump's going to have to make, which he has been, and everybody has been saying the best way to stop this conflict is for Donald Trump to tell Israel that if you do this, we will not protect you from Iran. Donald Trump has not said that. Actually, Donald Trump has been known to help establish the creation of the capital, Jerusalem, so that inside of Israel they could build the third temple. Big stuff, big religious stuff there that we're not going to get into today.
Yeah, that's a conversation for another time. But from what I do understand is that tensions between Trump and Netanyahu are relatively high. Like, they're not on good terms right now. They used to be, but apparently Netanyahu has really pissed Trump off. Like, Trump, a lot of people would argue that Trump is wising up to the way things are going in terms of the globalist agenda, and is giving a lot of pushback. Now, me personally, I think there has been some headway made. There are definitely some things I would like to see done that aren't being done, such as, the release of the Epstein list and everything else that kind of falls under Pam Bondi's jurisdiction. But a lot of that has to do with, the FBI having their hands tied, or, them being held hostage. It's being insinuated. I'm not a political analyst.
The only reason why the Epstein list would actually be still sealed is because it's evidence. And no one's allowed to discuss it because it's an ongoing investigation. So that would never be leaked. Like that may very well be like what kind of went down with the whole Watergate thing. Like that's probably like very similar in stature. But like, yeah, like because if the evidence, I don't know exactly how like the chain of custody for evidence works in the United States, but like if all of that like becomes public knowledge and then like violence erupts and tralala, like that is like the what's that? There's a charge for that. Obstruction of justice. If you release the file, right, and people use the file as a hit list, well, then all these people are being denied court cases. They're being denied justice. So the releasing of the Epstein files would constitute obstructing of justice. Now, that it would only apply if there's an open investigation.
Yes.
If there's no investigation, then it's just information and it should be released to the public.
Yes, absolutely. And at which point, if the federal government can't get it done, 2 points need to be made here. One, where are the checks and balances? You have these various branches of government. Oh shit, what popping off? Uh-oh, emergency ice cream meeting. You have all these branches of government, Congress, the Senate, the state houses, the district judges, and the presidency, all serving as kind of a check and balance to the governmental system. Well, where are the checks and balances on these authority systems, whether it be local law enforcement, FBI, or even the CIA? Where are the checks and balances? Where were the checks and balances for the NSA spying on American citizens? Where was the checks and balances to the CIA, or even now the FBI? Where are those checks and balances? Where is the agency responsible for keeping these other agencies in check, and vice versa?
That one doesn't exist. I don't think that,
and that's something we need. That is, if you're going to get something done, that is something you need. But until you can get that done, if you have an attorney general like Pam Bondi, who allegedly is willing to prosecute, let's go Batman Begins here. How are you going to bring Falcone down? Leverage on the judge, or a good judge, and a DA willing to prosecute. At which point you got a good attorney general, allegedly Pam Bondi, who is willing to do the prosecution and the investigations and whatnot. But, the investigators, like the FBI, you kind of got a problem there. At which point, why not just forego the FBI and issue a subpoena to groups like InfoWars and Alex Jones and say, okay, we're investigating this issue. We need everything you've got on this issue. Like, say, let's take the Podesta plan of 2020. The attempt to incite an insurrection. It's like, okay, we have this present issue. Give us everything you got on the John Podesta plan of 2020. Why not? Why not go to InfoWars, Pam Bondi, and say, hey, give us everything you've got on John Podesta's war games for 2020.
I think, and I'm not like, okay, first I have to make a disclaimer, because at this point I'm probably just making shit up. But I really believe that we would be falling inside of some sort of a realm that would give somebody power under the Espionage Act. where like Alex could be prosecuted as a domestic terrorist spy because he has all of this information on all of these high profile people. He's never been subpoenaed to court, which means he's never actually in these situations. He's never been, his information has never been subpoenaed to prosecute somebody. And like, yeah, like if he went and got like a private eye course or something like that, and like where his information is admissible as evidence, he would become a very dangerous person. But I really think that it would be to safeguard Alex from being called a homegrown spy. Although I think that's what we used to call journalists.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, there are legislations that protect journalists in varying degrees. So I would think that you could subpoena, in theory, somebody like Alex Jones, who has done investigative journalism over all these topics over all these years, and go, okay, we're investigating this topic. Here's a subpoena. Give us everything you've got on this. Like whether it be John Podesta, 9/11, the JFK assassination, you know, what have you. Now, if you really want to get into some screwy shit, here's one for you. One of the biggest issues, you know, with this whole Epstein file thing is that, you know, nobody wants to sit down and watch those videos, which I understand. But you know what? There are dozens of criminals who, relatively nonviolent offenders who were probably just in possession, who would probably love the opportunity to get their freaking fill on watching a lot of this content. At which point, deputize those felons, you know, maybe commute their sentences.
Oh, dude,
It's like, okay, for every video you watch and give a report on, you get X amount of time knocked off your sentence.
Oh, dude, like I would be okay.
Or you get a nice little.
You might get an ice cream cake.
You get something. Done. You get an ice cream cone for whatever, or something nice for your prison cell or something. You know, incentivize these people to incentivize these people.
This is how I would do it. Okay, and how would I incentivize these people? Okay, so they're inside of a fucking box. They're in jail. They're in jail for a urge that, according to them, they cannot control. Okay, fair. I can understand this argument because I'm a straight guy and I see a pretty lady and it is what it is. Right? I don't control it. That just happens. So I can side with this argument. And it's because I side with this argument that I can say all the nasty, awful shit that I'm about to say. But it is my humble, public, and professional opinion. Why? Because I've been called crazy a few times. So it is my opinion that these individuals that are incarcerated for these kinds of crimes should totally, absolutely be asked to verify if these videos are the content in which that has been said that they are. And we can actually determine whether or not it is or is not by something as simple as a brain scan. You see, so we're going to put some little ECG caps on these guys, and we're going to let them watch whatever the hell it is that we're going to ask them to watch. And we're going to monitor their brain, because at this point, I'm not going to let the science go to waste here, because we need to understand why and how these brains tick so that we know how to fix. And if we cannot fix, then we might have to look at euthanasia 101. But here's the biggest problem. That's very Adolf Hitler's Germany. I never said that he wasn't killing people. I just asked you to entertain the thought of the kind of individual that he was killing. So
yeah, and we're not going to get into all that, but you know, from a historical aspect, yeah, that would be a lot of MK Ultra,
yeah,
and so on and so forth.
And the United States is against that kind of scientific research. But in this exact situation, it's ripe for the picking to make that kind of science acceptable, given the nature of the victim, which would be the sex offender.
Okay.
Because
if there was a safe and humane way to monitor the brain activity of the human
Oh,
mind and
dude,
its responses,
it's just a
without
salad
bringing harm
test.
to the individual, I don't think too many people would be opposed to that. But
Most-
inhumane and essential torture for the sake of science, like what happened during the Holocaust and World War II and with Bayer back in the day and so on and so forth. That's a
Right,
big red line that most
that
people
is.
aren't even willing to discuss.
That's right. And so you would to the sex offender, you would sell it to them as we are and collecting the information is painless. It doesn't hurt any more than putting on the caps that the swimmers wear there, those latex thingies. It doesn't hurt any more than that. What hurts the most is the cap coming off because it pulls your hair a little bit. But it's a very painless process in that regard, and it would be sold to them in a we're going to monitor this and so on and so forth, so that we can help people like you in the future, so that maybe we can make it so you don't go to jail. Maybe we can identify you at a young enough age and we just modify your life like we do for special needs people. Like, we have a short bus for a reason. Like, this would just be observed as a completely different kind of disorder, right? But this is the largest value behind this is that it would have to be so like firmly instituted as a form of disorder. At no point could a psychiatric disorder be observable as normal. Otherwise, we'll find ourselves inside of the transgender debate all over again.
Yeah. At which point, we kind of deviated off of my point a little bit here, and quite a bit.
Quite a bit.
I want to get back to that point of, if the FBI, if you can't get agents to watch that content and do reports on what it is they saw so that prosecutions and the investigation can move forward, then why not deputize the nonviolent offenders, people who were just, say, in possession of certain content, let them sit down and watch it and write reports on it, deputize them, give them the basic level of training, observe, report, document, and utilize those documents there.
Because we can't, inside the American criminal justice system, the evidence provided by a convict or a criminal, it never really holds the necessary amount of weight. It always turns into, but that guy was a drug addict. That guy was a sex offender. That guy was a insert crime of choice. And I believe that's probably
a credible reference. And that would be the precedent argument. But, I'm saying, where there's a will, there's a way. They could find a way to get this content processed and get the reports out and move forward with the investigation and subsequent prosecutions.
Exactly. Well, scientific data, just like DNA is scientific data, is admissible in a court of law. I'm almost positive that a brain scan is too. So if you have a known sex offender that you've put up to a brain scan and made him watch the content, and the brain scan demonstrate that he was aroused, clearly he was watching something he wasn't supposed to be watching, the brain scan is admissible in court.
Yeah, at which point that's actually something you could bring up too, and make their testimony admissible and these reports admissible. Lie detector tests. It's like, okay, did you see so and so in this video? Can you assert that what you have stated in your report in review of this video is 100% factual? You can give a person a polygraph test, which are now admissible in court. So you can have your non-violent pedophile who was just looking at kiddie porn on the internet review these Epstein files, write reports for, a more comfortable stay in their prison, and then move forward with these subsequent prosecutions. I mean, and you wouldn't even have to sit there and maybe even watch all of it. It's like, okay, how many people were involved? It's like, okay, let's just look for the videos that classify for these people. It's like, okay, we need one video for Clinton. We need one video for this person, one video for that person. Exactly. All it takes is one. You don't sit there and need to watch all the content. Just, classify how many videos each person is in, And all you would need is one video. Like if you're looking to implement Bill Clinton on the Epstein case, like, okay, we have somebody who has reviewed one video featuring Bill Clinton and ex-child. This is what happened. Here's the statement. Here's the polygraph determining that what he saw and what he stated. Oh, genius, kid. What he stated, factual. And at which point you can, in theory, proceed with the investigation. Again, where there's a will, there's a way.
Absolutely. And like, I think we just
people in the administration and government, they're not stupid. They're not
What?
Stupid. If they want to get it done, they can find a way.
It's like I've always said, it's possible. Why? Because dumbass me was able to think of it.
Exactly.
Right? Like if I can think of it, if you can think of it, without belittling ourselves, if we can think, there are people that get paid a lot of money they must be fully capable of thinking of these things. Otherwise, we're all screwed.
Yeah, and that's why I would call out people like Alex Jones. Alex Jones has been doing this shit for 30 years. How come he hasn't thought about this? How come little old me, who doesn't have a degree in journalism, doesn't have any government contacts, doesn't have any formal training in law enforcement, and the extent of my training is first responder, security first responder stuff. Okay,
Yep.
How is it I thought of this over, say, Alex Jones or a law enforcement agency or even a government agency? How is it I thought of something that they all did?
That's why I said we should be collecting paychecks and we should be part of fucking think tanks. And maybe we could just,
Sign me up.
Sign me up. I'll fucking sit in a room and think for you for a fucking couple of hours a day. I'll do like that. I will.
Yeah, I do it all day, every day. You might as well get paid for it.
Right. And like you can ask me the dark shit. Like you could be like, okay, like, so if you were to attack the country, like how would you do it? Okay, well, tell me which country I'm attacking. Okay. Give me 7 days. Yeah. And get a war plan together. And I'll tell you how I'm attacking, how I'm winning. And you're not going to like how it's done, but at least when it's over, it's done. I'll war game. I'll think tank for not for anybody. Let's not over fucking sell ourselves here. I don't need fucking the reincarnated Osama bin Laden hitting me up. But right, like fuck. But like, yeah, if ever my nation were to come to me and be like, yo, I need you to tell me how you would do it, in a heartbeat, I would do it. If the American government came to me and be like, yo, how would you do it? I tell you guys, I wouldn't even hold back. I would make sure that it was as violent as it had to be, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for how to protect the nation.
Yeah.
Right. And this is the biggest reason why the Democrats are pushing for no borders. Forget the whole conspiracy theory attached to it. Remember back in the day, about I don't know, maybe a couple months ago, we were discussing how just being one continent instead of 3 countries, we would have to do like some trading off of some shit, and like that it would totally be possible. But because the fundamental reason here benefits the United States the most in this context and on this side and probably this side here alone, but the defense. The United States foots the largest bill for defense for this continent. And I'm a Canadian and I know this. Like, my country is safe because the Americans are my neighbor. Like, that's common knowledge. And if Canada was part of the United States, and if the United States was part of Canada, and if that thing was part of Mexico, and if Mexico was part of that, and all we had to do was to protect the water coastline of the continent, the military budget gets substantially fucking cheaper. And that's why you got to remember, Donald Trump is the president of the United States of America. His job is to make the United States' military job as easy as humanly possible by being the liaison of the bullets and the bank. The bank pays for the military secures the banks, which in turn secures the nation. So if he did that for an entire continent, he'd be saving 3 countries a lot of money, and he'd go down in history as like one of the really good guys. He would be the American president that brought the American dream to the continent, not just this little sliver. every president has a dream, wants to accomplish something large. And I believe that Donald Trump would like to see the North American Union on his watch. I think that's what he would like to see. And he is a businessman. It's always about the money. He would probably wants to be the president that brings the Republic of the United States to the continent, where the whole continent follows the same laws, the same rules. And on his business side, he wants to be known as a president who saved a shit ton of money to the American people. What looks horrible today, if accomplished, could look beautiful tomorrow. I'm not naive to that. And there's deep down inside, I really do believe that that's what's happening, because the king just told Canada that it was time for us to aim high, to dream big, and to move even bigger. I think the king gave Canada permission to grow beyond the United States.
And just to be clear, when you're saying king, you're not talking about Trump.
No,
you're talking about the King of England.
The actual king, who is still my head of state, right? Like the king is Canada's head of state. Canada's prime minister is the liaison between the people and the crown. But we are still attached to the crown. I think it's like something like 3% or 1%. It's a very small percentage, but that percentage is what allows us to use the king's bank. His gold backs our currency. And he does that for 52 countries.
And it's raining now.
Raining. Right. So he's asking Canada to grow big. And I don't know if you've noticed, but like we've been stealing from you guys on an international economic level. Canada just stole 7 of the largest investors that the United States had.
I think God got tired of the protests. It just started raining. And now people are clear.
We're like, be still, child. Go home.
Yeah, I might be here for a minute.
Right, but hey, you got amazing content. Like, you should totally market like that. Like what she took a moment to speak to you and things like that. Like, give her.
I'm gonna take excerpts of this later.
Yeah. Right, and that's why, like, there's days when I say, like, the world needs a prophet and I'm not him. But then, like, shit like that happens. Like, you're halfway across the fucking world. Like, when you're done, rewatch this. Watch how our nonsensical gibbledy-gook talk that we were having before the interview completely lines up with your interview. We didn't plan any of this. We don't do scripted activism.
Nope.
It's
all you see on me. All you can see on me is what I got. I got my bottle of Kool-Aid and my phone. That's all I've got. I'm not taking notes. Everything was just completely off the cuff here.
Right, and she treated you like an American citizen. She took moments to speak. That means something. That she didn't ignore the guy that went and did an interview that was not wearing a suit and tie. She didn't ignore you. Right? Like that means something. You don't have to be pro-blue or pro-red to see that an individual. She was just good at
really coming down.
She had
freaking soap.
Oh man. Hey, it was kind of funny though, because here's the other fun part, that the world needs a prophet, but it's not us. How long did we say we were going to be doing this for?
For the duration.
No. When you contacted me, it's like, how many hours did I need to have free?
2 hours.
Look at the live count cam.
Yeah, hour and 49 minutes so far.
If the thunder strikes at 2 hours, pack up and go home.
Right? Well, I mean, I'm already soaked, so. But I'm going to go ahead and essentially call this Everybody's clearing out. My phone's broken, so if it gets wet, I'm screwed.
Okay, you gotta do me a favor. If a lightning
Yo.
strike, if a lightning strike happens in exactly 10 minutes, it's because I said so.
I'll tweet it.
Okay, yeah, okay, cool.
Like
All right.
Connor was right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just something foolish if it goes down like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna get out of here, brother.
You take care, my
I'm
friend. Thank you.
gonna go hunt me down a cop to help me out of this situation with my locked car. So, because I'm an idiot.
No, you'll get through it. You'll get through it. Take
All
care.
right. Later, brother.
Peace.